The New York Stock Exchange. Chaos is absolute. Traders are physically fighting each other to sell shares that were worth $400 yesterday and are trading for $2 today. In just 24 hours, $14 billion in wealth has evaporated into thin air. By the end of the week, that loss will hit $30 billion. That is more than the entire cost of World War I. Gone in a matter of days. Suicides are beginning in Manhattan financial districts. Unemployment is about to rocket from 3% to 25%. But if you look past the screaming traders and the panicked crowds, you might see something strange. A few men are standing very still, because while the world is ending for 99% of the population, these men are about to make more money than Rockefeller. To understand how you make a fortune when the world is starving, we have to go back to the summer before the crash. The Roaring '20s weren't just good, they were irrationally exuberant. From 1921 to 1929, the Dow Jones Industrial Average shot up six-fold. It went from 63 points to 381 points. Everyone from your dentist to the shoeshine boy was buying stocks. But they weren't buying with cash, they were buying on margin. This meant you could put down 10% cash and borrow the other 90% from your broker to buy stock. If you had $1,000, you could buy $10,000 worth of RCA or General Motors. As long as stocks went up, everyone got rich. But if that stock dropped just 10%, your entire initial investment was wiped out instantly. It was a house of cards built on $8.5 billion of borrowed money. Most people were blinded by the easy profits. But a man named Joseph Kennedy saw the cracks in the foundation. 230, the short seller. Joseph Kennedy, father of future President JFK, was already a wealthy man in 1928. He had made millions in banking and Hollywood film production. But unlike the masses, he knew the market was rigged because he was one of the people rigging it. He frequently engaged in stock pools. This is where a group of wealthy traders would quietly buy up a stock to inflate its price artificially. Then, they would sell it all at once to unsuspecting retail investors, pocketing huge profits while the stock crashed. He knew the 1929 market was just one giant stock pool waiting to burst. Legend says he knew it was time to get out when a shoeshine boy gave him stock tips. Whether that story is true or not, his trading records tell the real story. In the summer of 1929, Kennedy didn't just sell his stocks, he went short. Short selling is betting that a stock will go down. You borrow shares you don't own, sell them at the current high price, and wait. When the crash comes, you buy them back at pennies on the dollar and pocket the difference. It's a high-risk strategy that can bankrupt you if you're wrong. Kennedy was not wrong. When Black Tuesday hit, Kennedy was short major companies that were plummeting 30%, 40%, 50% in hours. Well-established banking families lost 80% of their net worth. Kennedy's fortune exploded. By some estimates, he cleared over $4 million during the worst phases of the crash. That is equivalent to roughly $70 million in today's purchasing power. He exited the crash as one of the richest men in America. But Kennedy just played defense. Our next billionaire played unparalleled offense. For 45, the bottom feeder, J. Paul Getty in 1930, the Depression was in full swing. Oil prices had collapsed to 10 cents a barrel in some areas due to massive oversupply. From new Texas oil fields, established oil companies were trading for less than the cash they had in the bank. Enter J. Paul Getty. Getty was a 38-year-old oil man who had just inherited $500,000 from his father. In 1930, $500,000 was an unbelievable amount of liquid capital. Most people would have buried that cash in a backyard safe. Getty decided to go shopping. He realized that Wall Street panic had driven stock prices far below their actual real-world value. He called this buying straw hats in winter. No one wants a straw hat in December, so you can get them virtually for free. But eventually, summer always comes. Getty set his sights on the Pacific Western Oil Corporation. It was a massive holding company with vast oil reserves. Before the crash, its shares traded above $70. By 1932, panic selling had driven the price down to $3 a share. Getty did the math. He realized the company had more than $3 per share just in oil sitting in storage tanks. Buying the stock at $3 was literally buying dollar bills for 50 cents. He used his inheritance to aggressively buy every share he could find. He took control of Pacific Western and then used its assets to buy an even bigger prize, Mission Corporation. He built one of the world's great oil empires for pennies on the dollar. When the economy eventually recovered, Getty wasn't just rich, he was the richest man in the world, and he did it by buying exactly when things looked their absolute worst. But here's where it gets interesting. While Getty was buying hard assets like oil, another man was buying pure paper failure. You probably haven't heard of Floyd Odlum. You should have. He might be the single most successful investor of the Great Depression era. Odlum ran a company called the Atlas Corporation in the summer of 1929. Much like Kennedy, Odlum smelled smoke. He liquidated almost all of his company's holdings, sitting on $14 million in pure cash when the market crashed suddenly. He was one of the only people on Wall Street with liquidity. In 1930, investment trusts companies that just held portfolios of other stocks were collapsing. Investors were terrified that these trusts would go bankrupt, so they sold their shares for anything they could get. Odlum saw an anomaly. He found trusts that had $10 worth of solid assets for every share, but were trading it for dollars a share due to panic. He started buying them up wholesale. He wasn't just buying stocks. He was buying entire diversified portfolios at a 60% discount. By 1933, he had purchased or taken control of 22 different investment trusts. He merged them all into his Atlas Corporation while the rest of the country was standing in breadlines. Atlas Corporation's assets grew from $14 million to over $100 million during the worst years of the Depression. He didn't create new businesses. He didn't hire thousands of new workers. He simply used cash as a weapon when no one else had any. Odlum proved that in a deflationary crisis, cash isn't just king, it's emperor. But not everyone profited by manipulating finance. Some profited by offering escape. You might think the first thing people cut from their budget during a depression is entertainment. You would be wrong. In the 1930s, an estimated 60 to 80 million Americans went to the movies every single week. The population of the entire country was only about 125 million. Why? Because for 15 cents, you could escape your miserable reality. For 2 hours, you could sit in a heated theater, away from your cold apartment, and watch beautiful people live problem-free lives. It was the cheapest form of therapy available. Studios like MGM, headed by Louis B. Mayer, thrived. Mayer became the highest-paid employee in the United States during the depths of the Depression. In 1937, he earned over $13 million in salary and bonuses. That's over $28 million a year in today's money. While the average American family struggled to bring in $1,000 a year, Mayer was earning that every few hours. Other cheap luxuries also exploded in value. Sales of cigarettes skyrocketed. Cosmetics defied the economic gravity, creating fortunes for families like the Louders and Revsons. People couldn't afford a new car or a house, but they could afford a lipstick or a pack of Lucky Strikes to feel just a little bit normal. The billionaires didn't just profit from finance. They profited from human psychology, which brings us to the uncomfortable truth about these fortunes. 12 o'clock. The wealth transfer. We often think of the Great Depression as a time when wealth was destroyed. That is technically incorrect. Wealth wasn't just destroyed, it was transferred. It moved from the impatient to the patient. It moved from the indebted to the liquid. Between 1929 and 1932, 40% of all American home mortgages went into default. Millions of families lost their homes, their farms, and their life savings. But those physical assets, the houses, the land, the factories, didn't disappear. They were just acquired by the people who had cash. Men like Getty and Odlum didn't cause the Depression, but they served as the ruthless mechanism that consolidated America's assets into fewer hands. By 1937, despite the New Deal's efforts to redistribute wealth, the top 1% still owned over 45% of the nation's total wealth. The crisis had actually made the ultra-wealthy even more dominant relative to the average worker. And we see this pattern repeat in every major recession since in 2008. While millions lost their homes, private equity firms bought up entire neighborhoods of foreclosed houses. In 2020, while small businesses collapsed by the thousands, billionaire wealth surged by over $3 trillion globally. The mechanism hasn't changed, only the speed has increased. The Great Depression taught us a brutal lesson about capitalism. It is a system that ruthlessly punishes debt during a downturn and infinitely rewards liquidity. Joseph Kennedy, J. Paul Getty, and Floyd Odlum weren't necessarily smarter than everyone else. They were just prepared. They understood that the best time to buy is when there is blood in the streets, even if it's your own neighbor's blood. As we look at our current economy, with record high stock markets and record high debt, you have to ask yourself one question: if the music stops tomorrow, who is holding the cash and who is just holding the debt? We are seeing similar patterns today with massive concentration in tech And finance, do you think the next major crisis will create even more billionaires? Or have we put enough safeguards in place to stop it? I want to know your take. Option A, the rich get richer again. Or option B, the system holds. Leave your prediction in the comments below. And subscribe so we can revisit this when the next downturn inevitably hits to see who was right.